Well, welcome to the latest episode of the Ultimate Wellness Group Transformation Tuesday. Very thankful that you took a little of your Tuesday to spend some time with us in the climate that we're living in when there's so much to take our attention. And so I thank you. Today's episode is female preventative measures and considerations. So we're going to go through each of the body systems that we typically have screening tests for and explain the reasons, and then also some things that you should take in consideration when you are talking and dealing with these particular screenings. So in the name of Allah, the beneficent, the most merciful, I bear witness there is no God but Allah, and I bear witness that Muhammad is his messenger. I bear witness that Allah came in the person of Master Father Muhammad, raised one from among us, taught him for 3 1/3 year, when this man that was taught by God in person gave us some writings, some books. And one of the major ones here behind me, How to Eat to Live, which is the platform of everything that I talk about here on the Ultimate Wellness Group, Transformation Tuesday. We thank God that he chose the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And then, of course, in these perilous times, these difficult, sometimes seemingly unbearable times that we're living in now, we were left with a man that is coming soon to give us guidance on July 4th, 2020. So make sure you tune in to NOI.org. And I'm talking about none other than Minister Louis Farrakhan, who will give us some guidance and give us some information and some insight that will give us peace and give us the ability to look at these times and find a way to make it through them. So in their names, I greet you in the words of peace of Assalamu alaikum. Again, I thank you for taking some of your time in perilous times. It's very difficult. Typically I have a smile on my face when I start my show, but it's kind of difficult to continue to smile in a climate like we're living in, since our last couple of shows where we are putting people's names up so that we never forget them, and we let their families know that we care, we are concerned, and that our prayers are with them. Since that day, there have been, that I know of, 5 lynchings, people actually being hung, and of course, 2 more shooting deaths of Black men. And it's really difficult for me to see how anybody could think that these things are circumstantial. And so as a Black man who's lived on this planet Earth for as many years as I have and seen as many things that I've seen, I don't think that we can take that as a happenstance situation. We are at war. And as a people, we need to really understand this. And I believe, just to express just a little bit, I think our biggest problem right now are our so-called allies and the lies and deceit and the technology that they bring into our reality. If you notice, even if you have some controversy with what Black Lives Matter stands for, the reality is the statement is true that Black lives do matter. And the only reason that somebody would need to say that is because our lives has been treated as if they have not mattered since we've gotten to these shores in 1555. And so through slavery, through Jim Crow, through our fight for human rights, and we were only given civil rights, to the modern day when we're still crying, fighting, and complaining about the same problems, it should be clear to us that we have no allies that are meaningful. It's time for Black people to understand that with our resources, our minds, our money, and our ability, we are the change that's needed. And so again, I had to start this show off with that. I know it's not the subject, but it is the subject that's heavy on my heart. And so as we go through the show, if you think of anybody, any of the names of people that have been murdered that we need to keep in our minds and keep in our hearts and keep their families in our hearts, post them up. And let's continue to do the type of things that give us the mental health for us to be able to make it through these perilous times. July 4th is going to be a great day. We're going to get a good message. But before and after that, we still have to make it every day. And we have to try to find the best way to have a positive mind state as we go through this. Okay. So just wanted to start off today with that. We give a couple shout outs and we will get into the show. Maxine Bland, Fode Teray, greetings from Germany. Wow. I don't know if I've ever had anybody from Germany before, but praise to God. Jamil, Assalamu alaikum. Khalila, Dora, Kimberly Harris, Darlene Paisley, Jennifer Muhammad. Assalamu alaikum to all of you, and thank you for coming in. So without any further from me, I'm going to get directly into what you all came here for today, and that is to have a discussion about what type of preventive screenings should a woman expect, and then how does she frame her thought processes around that, making sure that she's viewing that incorrectly, and then allowing this screening to be at the best benefit for her. Okay. So we're going to start with something that most people may not even consider. I know a lot of doctors don't consider it, but that's not supposed to be up there. But it's something that I definitely consider, because the reality right now is that most of us have probably had some type of interaction with a person who has lost or is losing their memory, right? And so one of the things that I think is very important for us to all consider is that screenings are things that a physician should be doing that give you the ability to have a test done, and then that resulting information from that test is to give you some comfort that you're not going to have to deal with this particular problem. Okay. Something that is growing in the United States and all over the world is dementia. The word dementia, D-E-M-E-N-T-I-A, dementia, is a general term that is the loss of memory and or the losing of the memory, right? And so if any of us have dealt with that in our family, that is something that we should take very seriously. There is a screening that we do typically when people are a little older that is about their memory. But my personal suggestion on this show is that you should go online, and what I'll do at the end of the show is I'll put, I think there are about 2 or 3 different ones. I meant to put them up before the show, but I'll put them up after the show on tests that you can do on yourself, and then tests that maybe husbands and wives or family members can do on each other. And it's basically just to kind of check what your memory is like and what your recall is like, short-term, long-term, all those type of things. Because with the climate that we have in this country where things are so toxic, and there are a lot of foods out here that affect our minds and our brains because of the fat toxins that are in them that have a tendency to affect more of our fatty tissue, which the brain is a large part. The brain has a large aspect of it that is fat. Then we have to start doing things that we check ourselves, because I'm getting a lot of people that are reaching out to me complaining about their memory. And we're talking about young people. We're talking about people in their 40s and their 50s. And, you know, when I graduated medical school, memory problems was something that you would expect in a 70 or 80-year-old. And so all of these diseases that we expected later in life are happening younger and younger. And so that would be my first one, is to say that, women should be concerned about their memory, because you don't want to lose your memory. But, then at the end, I'll talk very briefly about what I think that we should do in general about all of these medical problems, because when you're screening for something, the purpose of that screening is either to find it early or to find some risk factors that are leading to that problem. And then the doctor is supposed to give you some suggestions on how you eliminate or try to slow the progression. Well, here at the Ultimate Wellness Group Transformation Tuesday, I'm going to give you the information on what I truly have evaluated and assessed over the years that can stop you from getting these medical problems. So that's the purpose of today's program, is to talk about these screenings, but also to talk about what you can do to make sure that down the line, you will not have to worry about these problems coming on you. Why would you want to lose your memory, right? It just makes a lot of sense. So if you look at this picture of the brain here, I just had this up so we could look at just some of the different aspects of the different parts of the brain and how they are part of our daily reality. And as I lost my father in 2017, his deterioration was from his memory. And he made a statement to my brother one day. He said, if I could just get to that shotgun, I'd end this now. And that just, to me, is a very profound statement of how painful it is not to be able to remember things. And at that time, I think he was a few years in it, but he was in and out. Like some days I would go visit him. He wouldn't know me. Some days he would. And I'm sure a lot of us have had those type of interactions with our family members. And it's a very painful existence, especially when you're a type of person like my father was. He was an avid reader. He liked to learn. He always was trying to get to know more and do more things. And, I think that was a very huge impact on me and my life to try to be the same way. But the point that I'm getting to is that this mind, this brain, the brain being the physical thing, the mind being what comes out of it, and what we see as a product of the mind, it's very, very destructive when a person starts to lose that ability to have that, what we consider normal functioning. So I pray that you understand why I started there. Okay. Next we are going to go to, and I'm going to try to go down the body. Is probably not going to happen all the way 100, right? But I'm trying to go down the body, which makes sense on just keeping things in the perspective of thinking about how we manage things in a logical manner, right? So, give me just a second. Let me pull up this. The next one is going to be thyroid. There we go. I pray that you can see that picture. And so if you can see my cursor, this section here is your thyroid, the kind of pinkish looking thing, right? You see in between the major blood vessels. This would be what we consider the vocal cords or the voice box that we see moving as people talk, right? This which moves when we swallow. That's what that is right there. It's a cartilage. And so the thyroid gland sits right under and on the side of that area of your neck. Now, sometimes it can go a little bit higher. It can go a little bit thicker. It can go a little behind things. And so it's different for different people. But the point is that the thyroid is very involved in the overall metabolism and just the overall connection and balance of the body. It connects a lot of things together. It balances the body as a whole. So TSH, the actual substance that we actually test your blood for, that we test your blood for, comes out of the brain, and it's going to the thyroid to tell the thyroid what to do. The thyroid, after getting that instruction, produces T4 and T3 to go to the body and have whatever part of the body that needs to be influenced by that thyroid to get to work. Okay. Now, the issue that I am sure is a blessing by the God we serve is that I saw somebody this week and it brought up an idea that I really needed to share with you all. And that is, there are two ways when a person has a problem with their thyroid that we deal with it. The most common is a thyroid ablation, where we put some radioactive substances on iodine, because the thyroid is the only aspect of the human body that uses iodine. So we uptake iodine out of our bloodstream after we get it from our food. And that's how we make T3 and T4. T4 being the thyroid hormone that is produced by the thyroid in most abundance. T3 being the more active hormone. And in the body, T4 is transferred into T3 because, as I said, it's more active. Okay. So in order for that to happen, the iodine has to be brought in from the body in order to make that. When we want to destroy the thyroid, we put radioactive stuff on iodine. And so when it comes into the body, it destroys the thyroid. If you have that type of what we call ablation, usually there's nothing left of the thyroid. It's all destroyed. But sometimes people have surgeries to remove the thyroid. And as I said, sometimes it could be up in tissues. It can be behind blood vessels, behind other things. And so sometimes some of your thyroid tissue may be left over. And so when you're getting screened for your thyroid, if you've never had any problems, then you should be okay. But if you're the type of person that has had an ablation therapy, you probably won't have any TSH. I'm sorry, not TSH. You won't have any T4, T3 being produced. So you have to take a pill to do that. If you've had the surgery, they might have you on a pill too. But at some point, you need to have the screening without the medication to see if there's any thyroid tissue left. Because if there was a major problem with your thyroid, it could be still there. Or if they got the problem and there's still some thyroid there that can still produce your hormone, then you don't need to take the medication. Okay. And I'm going to get into specific blood work and look at the specific things that are in there in a few minutes. So please be patient with me while I go through this. Okay. So I pray that that makes sense. Let me take a quick look at if there are any questions so far. What we got? Darlene Paisley. I'm not sure if I mentioned you, but welcome in, Jennifer Muhammad. Greetings from Germany. Yes, sir. Leroy Muhammad, James Williams, D.A. Gordon, Marcia Moore, Erica Perez, Sharon Crockett, James Williams, Michelle X. Dai Young, Kabila Muhammad, Shonda Thompson, Seti Morena L. Thank you for all. Assalamu alaikum, Anissa. Assalamu alaikum to all of you and welcome in. Good question. Is there a difference between dementia and Alzheimer's? Yes, that's actually an excellent question. I'm glad you brought that up. I meant to touch the base on that. So again, as I typically talk about the human body and how beautiful it is, and we have to agree that something greater than us made this. There are some people that want to live in perpetual, I guess, time, and they put their names on things. So the word dementia is a general term. The word Alzheimer is a man's name who put on a specific type of dementia. So there are different types, right? You can have different ways that the pathology causes your brain cells to stop functioning correctly. And Alzheimer's is one. Alzheimer's is the most common. When we actually test a person's brain to figure out what caused their memory problems, that would be the most common one. So that is the explanation to your question. Let me know if I answered it. Shonda says, yes, my father's in the early stage according to his doctor. Yes. And if I may say, I'm going to talk about some solutions towards the end, but I just want to say this here. Once your family member starts having serious memory problems, it's a difficult situation to come back from. But I will say this, the people that I've had the most success with and the most success that I've seen in things that I've researched and studied is fasting. So that's a difficult thing to make a person who's losing their memory to do, because sometimes they will say things like, you're starving me, or, I'm hungry. And that's hard for you to do. That's a very emotional thing. But regardless of all of that, fasting is what I've seen work the best. And so it's a difficult process. So, when we're talking about screening today and prevention, make sure we continue to do what it takes to prevent these diseases from happening to us. And that is something that you all hear me talk on a regular basis, right, about fasting. The more you fast now, the longer and longer and longer it should take for you to ever have any memory problems, if we ever have them. So another good reason for us to make sure we have fasting in our daily thing. Khalif Muhammad, Cheryl X, Michael Boutte, assalamu alaikum to all of you. Michael Boutte, thank you for coming in, bro. I appreciate you, bro. Ahmad Parker, why do our tonsils swell up? I am going to try to get to that, brother, but I'm going to do this, these screening things first, okay? Michelle, yes, ma'am. Alita Champagne, wa alaikum salam. Okay, so let's get into the next subject, and that is, I think, one that may be very important for, or maybe the most important for women in the days that we are living in, and that is your breast screening. So, as a physician, as long as I have been a physician, I will have to say that I think the most important thing that a woman can do when it comes to screening her breast is to do a breast exam on yourself enough to know your breast so well that you know when it changes. Most women's breasts change before their cycle. Most women's breasts change when they eat certain things and maybe even are dehydrated or hydrated. And so if you know your breast that well, we as physicians are usually, most of the time, I can't remember the percentage right now, but I know it's a greater percentage of women that wind up with breast cancer. They found it themselves. They found something wrong with them breasts themselves. It was not the doctor that found it first. We may do the exam when you get there, but it was you that found it because you felt something just wasn't right, or you felt something in your breast that you knew didn't used to be there. Okay, so make sure you are doing your own breast exam, and then when you do go to your physician and have them do it, again, stay in control. Okay, if you have been feeling something on your breast all your life and you feel it on both sides, or even if you don't feel it on both sides, don't let somebody tell you something that you know is one way or the other. Don't stay in control. Stay in control with what you know is true about your body. If you've had these breasts all your life, you know them better than somebody else. And you have to keep that confidence within yourself, and don't let anybody take that confidence away from you when you go into that doctor's office. Okay. So breast exam is very important. The second thing that I will mention is that the general medical industry is telling women to get a mammogram every year after 40. And I'm here to say that I don't suggest that. I suggest that every woman should contact her insurance company and try to see if you can get a thermogram. A thermogram is like an ultrasound of the breast, which doesn't put all of that radiation in your breast. Now, here it is that we know for a fact that radiation is one of the promoters of cancer in the body. And we have women go do a mammogram of a fatty part of their body every year. And that doesn't have anything to do with the overwhelming amount of breast cancer that's occurring in society. As a thinking man, as a processing man, I believe that I'm giving better advice by telling you to don't do a mammogram, do a thermogram. And if it's not possible for you to get a thermogram and you wind up making the decision to do a mammogram, don't beat up yourself. Don't try to go crazy with it. That means you need to be on a radiation removal detoxification program after that's over. And that's a different discussion. If any of you need that, you may need to reach out to me, but that's definitely where your mind should be. It should be on detoxification. If it's a mammogram, a CT scan, an MRI, X-ray, any of those things, but specifically today, we're talking about a mammogram. You have to understand that radiation deposits itself in the body, and where does it mostly go? Into the fatty tissues. And so a program to reduce and remove that, or should I say a thought process to reduce it from the beginning by getting a thermogram, would be smart. And if you have to do a mammogram because that's what your insurance pays, if that's what your decision is, then just make sure that you do something to help relieve your body of all of that radiation. Okay. So that's it for the breast. I'm not going to get into the problems like breast cancer and breast lumps and all that kind of stuff, because I just want to stay with screening today. Okay. So next is going to be, as we move down the body, is going to be the lungs. And you know what? I forgot to do something before I started, so I'm going to have to do it at the end, but I'll get to that. So here we go with the lung. In a time that we live in, when we're having these chemtrails every day, where we're having people that smoke, I don't know about you all, but I get really irritated when I walk out of a building, or I'm walking just in general and I smell people smoke because they're not concerned about us, they're concerned about themselves. But that smoke that you inhale is detrimental to your body. Don't ever let anybody make you believe that secondhand smoke is worse than firsthand smoke. That's one of the biggest lies ever told. A person inhaling that fumes and that heat from that cigarette, from that cigar, from that blunt, from that weed that you smoke, that is detrimental and damaging to the lung tissue. And so those of us who smell it when we're walking by them or when they blow it and we have to inhale it, it is doing some damage, but it's nothing like the person that's smoking. And so as people age, of course, and the more they are exposed to toxins in the air, chemtrails, all the things that we are exposed to that we inhale, even a lot of the cleaning agents that we use. If a person uses a lot of bleach and uses a lot of ammonia or fabulosa, or these other so-called smelling good things, they do some damage. And over the years, you need to get your lungs screened. And in this day and time, the only screening there is for a lung problem is an X-ray. And an X-ray doesn't really show much. It can show some things, but there are a lot of things that it doesn't show well. Most of the time, by the time a lung X-ray starts to show that there's some problems, it's a pretty severe disease. And you're already seeing a pulmonologist, and they are, putting the tube down your nose and looking in your lung and seeing some of the specifics. Sometimes they do a little lavage and get some of your cells out of there to see what the problem is specifically. But just suggesting, those of you who do a lot of smoking, there are things that you can do, like spirometry exams and things of those nature. Sometimes doctors will send you for a test to see what your lung capacity and what your lung expectation, what your lung work, how your lungs work as far as the air that you breathe in and how fast you pull it out and all those type of things. So you can suggest and ask for those type of screenings from your doctor if you are a smoker, or if you even have worked in a type of environment like people who work in Houston and some of the oil environment. They're inhaling a lot of toxins. So it wouldn't be a bad idea for you to ask your doctor, if you start having some issues, whether you're having shortness of breath or whether you just have certain situations that happen to you that make you feel a little out of breath or just not normal, ask your doctor, because there are tests that we can set up. We don't have any general tests that we start at like a particular age for lungs, but there are things that we can do, and there are things that you can ask for. Okay. So that's for the lungs. Let me check and see if any of you have any questions, and then we'll move on to the next one. All right, somebody said off topic. I'm just sorry today, y'all, but today I'm not going to go off topic, okay? So if you have a question that is off topic, I will either take care of it later or I will send you one of the shows where I dealt with that, okay? Michelle Young says, can your thyroid be affected by having a hysterectomy? If your thyroid numbers fall within the normal range, can there still be a problem? Man. That is one heaven of a question right there, sister. And I am going to get to that, but I'm going to get to that when I get to the ovaries. Okay. So thank you. Please do not let me finish the pelvic organs of a woman without getting to that subject matter, because I really want to deal with that. And I think that question is profoundly important. Lita Champagne says, do you fast once a month? Absolutely. I do the Unity fast every month. And those of you who continue to come back, we're doing that together as well. But I also, because I eat one meal every other day, at the end of the month, I'm usually 14, 15 days fasting. So it's a different reality when you're eating one meal every other day. Anne Marie, wa alaikum salam. Bree Muhammad says, off topic of speaking of radiation, does an Apple Watch cause radiation in the body? Quick answer, yes. Sharon Crockett, did you do a previous program on radiation detoxification? No, I haven't done that yet. Chandra Thompson, then it was wa alaikum salam, Linda Muhammad. Allegra Bay, can you reverse lung disease? Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm going to make some general statements about reversing and or dealing with these things from preventive perspective before we get off the show. Daisy Muhammad, I'm concerned about how to decrease hormones that can increase breast cancer risk. Yes, we're going to get to that. Khalida Mom says, I grew up in a home where my mother chain smokes, which I do have some problems from that. What can I do to rebuild? I'm gonna get to that, y'all. I'm gonna get to that, y'all. You're gonna have a little patience with me, okay? Where are we going next? We are going to the bone. Okay, so here's just a general picture of your bone. And you can see the different aspects over here. You see where the marrow is, and the periosteum, it would be the covering of the hard part of the bone. I don't want to get into a whole lot of this. I just wanted to kind of show a bone in general. The top part of the bone, this part that they call epiphysis, at the top and the bottom are the areas of the bone that actually grow. So when you're looking at a child and you look at them, sometimes we can see our children grow within a couple of months, but sometimes when we're away from children, we come back and we see them like, dog, you got a lot taller. It's that outside portion of the bone that's actually continuing to grow. And the inside portion is a part that continues to get harder and harder. And that's also where we make our blood. So your blood cells and some of your immune cells are made in your bone marrow. But the point that I brought this up is because we're having more and more people have problems with osteoporosis and osteopenia, which are just two words that mean your bones are weak. Okay. And so when it comes to screening for that, the reality is that we have to be very careful with some of these things that are being told to us that really don't have true scientific merit. I know some of you women on here may be old enough where somebody has suggested that you take this pill. Sometimes you can take it once a week, sometimes once a month. They have one now, I think you take once a year. And these things are supposed to help you accumulate calcium in your bone and strengthen your bones. I'm sorry to say that there are no studies that have ever said that any of those pills work. And on the left here, you see healthy bone, and over on the right, you see osteoporosis, right? What we're really talking about is just a weakening of the bone, because these holes, which are normal, these cavities that are in the bone are normal. Why? That's where the blood is flowing. That's where the marrow is making your cells. That's normal. But when the holes start to open up and get bigger, it makes sense just by looking at that picture that bone is going to get weaker, right? And so most of the time, what we're dealing with mostly is the concern about breaking a bone, people falling and breaking their bones. And a lot of times people actually break their bone before they fall. They break it, they get in pain, and they fall. And then the damage is even worse once they hit the ground. But people with weak bones can break their bones just sometimes by turning or twisting or doing some of the normal reaching and things like that. And then you get to a point where something happens, causes that pain, and you fall. And a lot of times we think it was the fall that caused the break, but it actually was a break that occurred because of some type of tension or pressure on that bone, and it just couldn't handle it like it used to handle it. And so it's very important on a number of things in this one, right? Some of you have probably heard of or been told about the DEXA scan, which is when they test your whole body for the strength of your bones. And then the other thing they do as a screening for that is, of course, checking your vitamin D levels. And, specifically on vitamin D, the best source that I know of is milk that has not been homogenized, minimal pasteurization. And if you eat raw cheese or yogurt, salmon has some vitamin D. But the largest amount from my studies is from milk. You can also get some vitamin D from eggs, but I would suggest you make sure you're getting eggs that are soy free. The chickens didn't eat soy grains. Okay. And so that's how to take care of your bones from a dietary perspective. But the other reality about bones is exercise or activity. If you have a sedentary job and you do a lot of sitting and that's what you do most of the time, your bones are weak. It takes activity. It takes weight to make a bone strong. So get up and get moving. And that's one of the other ways that you can get your, bones screened, but also have the confidence that going in the future, you're going to be okay because you're doing the things to strengthen them. Okay. What we got here? I'm concerned about how to decrease. Okay, I'm gonna get to that. I grew up the lungs. Yes. What type of screening for teenage girls? Danny Muhammad, good question. And Jeff Reck and Joseph Muhammad. So I'm liking all of you all. What type of screenings for teenage girls? Well, that's a good question for teenage girls because actually, I'm going to get to that when I talk about the blood work, because there's a section that I'm going to talk about STDs, sexually transmitted diseases, which most people in the medical community now call STIs or sexually transmitted infections. I'm going to get to that there because I think it's going to be very important for me to talk about that from a perspective of what we should allow, what we should not allow, and some other screenings that we should consider. Okay, good questions. I'm going to get to those in a minute. Oh, yes. Chandra Tom said, yes, I need to get moving. Absolutely. We all do. We all got to stay active and get moving. Okay. So let's not allow ourselves to become complacent in any aspect because it's just not the best for us. Okay. Now I'm going to talk about the pelvic region of a woman. Of course, this is, slicing a person right down the middle. Not a person, a woman. But if you can see my cursor, you see here's the bladder. And then you have the uterus. The opening into the uterus is the cervix. And so this is the woman's vagina right here. And this is the woman's rectum and the anus here. Okay, this would be the vagina if you were looking at it like getting your pelvic exam. And so when we do your annual pap smear, there are many things that we are testing for, and that's why I'm using this picture. So when you first lay down on that table and we look at your vagina, one of the things that we're looking at is your urethra, because there are some things that we can look at the urethra and find, right? There shouldn't be any blood coming from a urethra. There shouldn't be any different coloration of the urethra from the skin that is around it, or I should say the layers of tissue around it. It should look very similar. We're looking at the vagina, of course, for certain type of discharges and things of that nature that can tell us a lot what's going on inside. And then, as most of us know, we take the little wooden stick or the little brush and we scrape around the cervix, right? Again, the cervix is the opening into the uterus. So this right here would be the cervix. If I'm looking at it from the vagina perspective, it looks like a very small hole. And we're checking that for cells because there is a delineation from the outside of the cervix to the inside of the uterus. There's a cellular change when you go from the outside, which is the cervix, into the inside. Those cells are different types of cells. And so that's why we test there, because that's the most common area where cells start to go bad, right? And so the test can be atypia, which means it just doesn't look normal. Dysplasia, meaning things are starting to go abnormal. And then you have stages of abnormal as you go in towards cancer. And so that's where that test is being done right there at the cervix, which is a screening for cervical cancer. And I want to ease your minds because right now we're living in a world that is cancer crazy. And I don't blame anybody because there's a lot of cancer going on. But I have seen most cervical cancers resolve with good programs. And that's not something I can get into today because I'm talking about the screening, but the screening is for cervical cancer. I just wanted to mention that because those of you who go get your pap smear and you're afraid sometimes to go get your pap smear, or you're worried out of your mind because you don't know what the pap smear is going to tell you, just understand that the majority of the time, if you're getting your test on a regular basis and you're doing good hygiene practices, good practices as far as what you use during that time of the month when you are bleeding, as well as things in your diet, exercise, drinking enough water, those type of things will help your system stay healthy. Okay. So I just want to mention that because we have to understand that everything that I'm talking about today as a screening test, there are things that you can do to make sure that you never have the problem that we're screening for. That's the purpose of today's show, to give you confidence knowing that going in the future, getting these tests done, you should get it done. And I'm going to go further in that in a minute. Okay, so that's it. And then most of the time, just to show this, we're going to talk about the colon in a minute, but this is where we're putting our finger to test most of the time to make sure there's no blood in your rectum. Okay, so those are all the things that we do during an exam when we're doing a pelvic exam on a woman, right? And let me see if there are any questions, because usually there are questions when it comes to this section. And this also is very important with what you said, Brother Danny, about what we do in young teenage girls. And so let me just say this. Mothers, I really don't care what the medical profession ever says. You are the most important aspect in a young girl's life. I have had mothers come in my office and question their daughters and wind up forcing their daughter to undergo an exam to wind up understanding that the daughter wasn't lying. That's a very difficult place for people to be. And so I'm saying that because it should be the agreement between a mother and a daughter when to start having pelvic exams. You should never allow a doctor to tell you when that is. That is a decision between you and your daughter. Now, if you are thinking or you're sure that your daughter is having sex, then that's the reason why we start doing pelvic exams, because there are things that happen after sex that start to increase risk factors. But the point that I'm getting to is moving that aside and saying that our daughter is chaste and our daughter is not in the lifestyle where we have to be concerned about that. Don't let anybody tell you that your daughter has to start at a particular age. That should be determined by you, your comfort level, your understanding, and then that young girl's understanding and maturity. And then you can always, of course, find somebody that you trust to have that conversation with, but don't just let somebody dictate to you. Again, we're talking about staying in control. And when it comes to screenings, that's what you have to do. You are screening to get information, but you have to stay in control. Don't let anybody take you out of a comfort zone, especially when it comes to your young daughter. Children always, but especially our young daughters, okay? So let's see what we got here. Wow, I need to, oh yeah, you said that. The light bearer. Walaikum salam. Thank you for coming in. The light bearer. Michelle says, is a yearly PAP still needed if you had a partial hysterectomy? You'd have to tell me what that partial hysterectomy is, because there are a lot of things that we mean when we say a partial hysterectomy. Sometimes a partial hysterectomy can mean that they took off a section of your uterus because there was a fibroid there. Sometimes a partial hysterectomy is when they removed the fallopian tubes and the ovaries. Sometimes a partial hysterectomy can be that there was a problem in the cervix and they removed a portion of that. So there are a lot of different meanings. So you'll have to let me know. But as long as you have a cervix, we believe that it's necessary to continue to have a pelvic exam, a pap smear, because as I was saying before, where those two different cell lines come together is where most of the dysfunction or the pathology starts to produce potential abnormal cells and cancer cells. So yes, if you have a cervix, I would say that you should get it done unless you're doing what I'm going to end with. Okay. And Simon, walaikum salam. D Kiki, thank you for coming in. Cheryl X, you say, what is the difference between partial and complete hysterectomy? Okay, so I guess I pray that I just answered that, because I just talked about what the different possibilities. Y'all let me know if I answered that question. At what age are pap smears unnecessary? The doctor told me I need a bone density test and tried to get me to take a flu and pneumonia shot. I said no, absolutely. Well, you got to understand, you're listening to the brother with the Ultimate Wellness Group, and I'm going to give you how I grew out of the typical, right? But in typical medicine, if you go to a typical doctor, they consider screening having vaccinations. You're not going to get that here. So I believe you gave the right answer, but I'm just saying that because you have to be prepared to deal with, if you go sit with a doctor, this is your primary doctor, you say, hey, I'd like to sit and talk to you about what I need as screenings. They're going to tell you vaccines. So be prepared to deal with that. At what age are pap smears unnecessary? I used to tell my patients that once you reach menopause, we would do a pap smear maybe every 2 years if you never had any abnormal ones. And then once we got a couple that were okay, then we could spread out and start doing every 5 years or every 10 years. And then we could get to a point where if they're normal, you're not sexually active, you're not doing any high risk activities, we can stop them. And so it depends. Like I wouldn't say the same thing to any two people. It all would depend on what that person's risk factors were, what that person's history was like, and what that person's current activity was like. And all those would go into how I would determine what to say to that person. But that's an excellent question. Latanya Muhammad, walaikum salam. Thank you for coming in. Sharon Crockett says, what is the latest age to begin a pelvic again? Let me know if I answered that, because I believe I answered that question for the young and for the old. Foray Teray says, sir, we have the African community would like to have a direct contact with you. Your show is making a big difference and would like to invite you and if possible. May Allah bless you and your family. Praise to God. There's my information at the bottom. So reach out to me. We can make it happen. I'm ready to travel anywhere where people will send for me. Ovaries remain. Okay. Yeah. So that's the aspect that I forgot to mention. I'm glad you remember that. I mean, you made me remember that. When we do your exam, and I showed you some of the aspects of what we're testing, right? The last part of the exam, we usually put our fingers in a woman's vagina and we're feeling in there. What is the reason of that? Because typically from the vagina, you shouldn't be able to feel the ovaries. They're in a position where we shouldn't feel them, but they're also in a place where if we put a little pressure in the right areas, if something is wrong with them, we can feel them. If they're enlarged, if they're swollen, or something is wrong, you can feel them. And so that's the part of the exam when we put our fingers in there and we're examining, we're testing the ovaries. So in a general screening, when your ovaries are normal, we shouldn't feel them. And so that is, as I was saying, the other aspect. You can take out the uterus, keep the ovaries. That's a partial hysterectomy. Take out the ovaries and the fallopian tubes. That's considered a partial hysterectomy. So anytime we take out any of those, what I would call reproductive organs, you are considered, like, one or the other, you're considered having a partial hysterectomy. If you take them all out, they call it a complete hysterectomy. It means that you would take out the uterus, which would include the cervix, the fallopian tubes, and the ovaries. If you take all of it out, it's a complete hysterectomy. If you take any of those things out individually and you leave the other ones, we call it a partial hysterectomy. And this would be the time when I would address the sister's question earlier about a hysterectomy and the thyroid. I think that's such a wonderful question because I personally have had many women in my office and explain to me why they never have felt the same since they had a hysterectomy. And I believe that in my research and my studies over the last few years, I have gotten a little more insight into why that possibly may be. So earlier, I talked about the fact that TSH is sent from the brain, right? We have a hypothalamus and a pituitary gland. The hypothalamus is the main, I would say, center for release of information to the body. It's constantly evaluating everything that's going on: temperature, sleepiness, hunger, pain, everything. And so it sends out signals. And those signals are in hormones or substances. So the hypothalamus tells the pituitary, the body needs some more coordination. We're not coordinated well enough. Okay, TSH leaves the pituitary, goes to the thyroid, tells it what? Tells what? We need some more TSH. We need some more T3 and T4. So the TSH comes from pituitary, tells the thyroid, make more hormones. So the TSH is telling the thyroid what to do. But the pituitary was told what to do by the hypothalamus. And so there's a feedback mechanism. Once I send that T3 out into the body, or I should say mostly T4, and has changed to T3 in the body. That T3 does what? Goes back to the hypothalamus and says, hey, control center, we've done what you told us to do. So now the hypothalamus is evaluating, okay, you did. The body's in a better balance, right? That's what's happening every day, every minute, every second of every day. That's how the whole body is kept in communication with each other. It's by those type of substances doing that feedback mechanism. The hormones of the ovaries are progesterone, estrogen, and we have other female hormones as well. And you also have testosterone and androgens, which are the more male hormones. They're in balance though. And so this whole system, as I always say, is a perfect system. This beautiful, perfect system goes astray when we stop understanding or we stop taking care of it correctly. And so when you take out estrogen and you take out progesterone and you take out testosterone and the androgens, which are made in a woman through the information that's coming from that same system, the hypothalamus to the pituitary, which sends out what? Sends out what? GnRH, gonadotropin releasing hormone, releases that to what? To the ovaries. And then you have LH and GnRH that actually produces the estrogen and the progesterone. So this system is perfect. This system doesn't have any flaws. The flaws come by our inability to do what's right, to keep it right, as I said, right? And so when you start taking things out, the ovaries, the uterus, the fallopian tubes, these things have much more consequence in the body than we realize, right? I've said before in my programs that the medical research arm of the medical industry is learning things every day. There's something coming out every day about this human body that some researcher somewhere in the world has learned. We will never exhaust the information of this body. I know one day when I came on here, I talked about the fires that were going on in the Amazon jungle. And as I was researching that, I found out that the scientists are learning every year in the Amazon jungle, they're learning a new plant and a new insect or animal every 2 days. The earth is just a microcosm. I'm sorry. The earth is a macrocosm of this human body. We're learning more things about this body every day. You see what I'm saying? And so to take out something as important as the only part of a human being that can reproduce, it's much more serious than just taking it out because you've got a fibroid and you're bleeding. It's much more important than just taking it out because you had some pain. And I'm not trying to belittle your pain. I'm not trying to belittle the problems that women are having. But that's the reason why we're having this screening conversation, because we have to get more serious about not allowing our organs to get to a place where somebody comes to take them out of you. Because once they take them out of you, there is nothing that can replace that God-given, beautiful organ that you had in your body. And so when it comes to a woman's mood, and when it comes to a woman's ability to have peace with the environments of the world, whether she's in nature or something that brings her peace in her environment inside, a child, a husband, a family member, a book, a good movie, something to read that takes her mind somewhere else. All of those things are sometimes highly tied to your hormones that are being produced by your ovaries. So when your ovaries are taken away, how can your mood be right? How can your expectation of peace be there when the hormones that are highly tied to that have been removed out of your body? I hope that makes sense to you all. And why is the thyroid and the ovary tied together? Because all of that works as one. Unity is not that everything does the same thing, or everybody, right, outside of the human body, everybody doesn't do the same thing, but everybody works together. So this human body, all these tissues, all these hormones, all these organs, all these different systems work together. And so anytime you take anything out of this human body, there are consequences coming. That's been my research. That's my understanding. And thyroid and the ovaries are very highly tied, because without one, you have problem with the other. A lot of women, when they have hysterectomies, they wind up with thyroid problems. And a lot of women that have thyroid problems and have their thyroid removed start having menstrual problems. So it's much bigger than we know. God put the system together, and we just have to sometimes, until understanding comes, we have to just try to toe the line of taking care of it in the best way that we can. So let me know if I answered your question about the thyroid and the ovaries. Okay. What? And Simon says, hot flashes, what to do? I'm going to get to all of that in just a minute. At the end, I'm going to spend a few minutes on what I think you need to do to make all of these situations either better or maintain them so you'll never have any problems. Okay. And I'm going to be honest with you all. Very honest. Tyrone Muhammad, April Muhammad. Thank you for coming in. Wa alaikum salam. Etta Purcell. Thank you for coming in. Good evening. D Kiki. What is your specialty? I am a family medicine physician, which means I know a whole lot and I can take care of you from the cradle to the grave. Let me tell it. April Muhammad, Allah's wisdom is so amazing. We don't even have to think. Just protect what he gave us. Allahu Akbar. And I couldn't say it better than that. Y'all ready in the show? She said it all. Maxine Bland, I've been in class. Did Dr. Akili mention anything about mammograms? Yes, I did, ma'am. So you got to go ahead and check that out, okay? Thank you, everybody, for the compliments. See if there are any more questions. Oh, okay. I see somebody's answering about the thermograms. Okay. Thank you. What can you do to help when the ovaries have been damaged by chemo? Same thing that I'm going to talk about in the end. Okay. Question answered. Thank you, ma'am. Yes, sir. If your thyroid number falls in the normal range, can there still be a problem? Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm going to get to that because I'm going to go over some lab results. Okay. So let me get to a couple of these other things. And all of you that are concerned about whatever has happened, you smoked, you drank, you had chemotherapy because you had cancer in the past, you had a surgery, you had something taken out. It does not change what the activity is. There's nothing you can do about what you damaged. There's nothing you can do about an organ that's being taken out. But at the end of the show, I'm going to tell you what I think you should do, because it's still your responsibility to take care of what you have to the best of your ability, right? And so that's what we're going to do. We're not going to worry about what was taken out. We're not going to worry about what damage we did. Where you are today, if you are on a health journey, meaning you have what you think is good health, you don't have any problems, you want to continue that way and get better, start today. If you're in a healing journey, meaning you did some damage, you messed something up, you know you're not doing right, you had surgery, you had chemotherapy, you worked in a plant and got all these fumes and chemicals, your mama smoked in your house. Today, let's do what it takes to improve this body, okay? We're about to get to that, man, in just a minute. You know where I'm going. But that's the answer. Okay, so we're going to talk about the colon now, and the screening that we do in the colon. If I can just say this in a nutshell, the screening that we do in the colon mostly is to try to prevent you from having cancer. And most of the problems in the colon produce bleeding. And that's why we have you either take the test home and you test your stool, or we stick our finger up in there, we put a little finger on some of your waste material and put it on that machine. And I'm talking about that little piece of paper, and we check, to see if there's any blood in your stool. Okay. So if we just look at this, I want to start here. I couldn't get a larger picture of this, so I apologize that it's small, y'all. But if you look over here, you see internal hemorrhoids. I've talked before specifically about hemorrhoids. So I'm not going to go in depth, but I just wanted to show, when you have a hemorrhoid, you are having basically a bulging of a blood vessel because of too much pressure. You're not eating enough fibrous foods. And you see over here, you have diverticulitis and diverticulosis. What is that? An outpouching of your colon. So that's a diverticulosis. And when they get infected, it's diverticulitis. Okay. And then, so again, hemorrhoid will bleed, right? Diverticulosis a lot of times doesn't bleed, but sometimes you get a little blood. Diverticulitis usually is very painful and it bleeds. Okay. So, and then I'm just saying that because I want you to understand why we're checking for blood, right? And so I want to show you this quick picture right here of a polyp, because I think sometimes people don't really understand what I mean when I say polyp. But if you look at that little polyp, it looks just like maybe a little popsicle or like an early plant growing, right? But this is a stalk that's connected to the wall of the colon. And this just continues to grow, right? So if you have a little outpouching, a little bump from irritation, whatever, and stool keeps pressing by that, it's going to make it what? It's going to get bigger. And that's what a polyp is. It's a abnormal tissue that's growing because of irritation and pressure and things moving by it and basically pulling it out and making it grow with that irritation. And so this is what a polyp looks like in the colon. And then, eventually they can turn abnormal, like I talked about in the cervix. It can go from atypia to dysplasia and then on to all the way abnormal to cancer. Same thing in here. That polyp can continue to grow. It becomes more and more abnormal until it can grow into cancer. And so that's why we're doing those screening tests. We're trying to make sure that you don't have the signs that something like this could potentially be going on in your colon, okay? And then again, like I said before, the benefit for the colon is that we can stick a tube up in there and we can look in there and see. And if we see anything that's very strange, it just looks very abnormal, of course, we can send you for further testing. And like I said, I have had the experience. I'm again, it's not patting on the back. I have some very good teachers, but I just took my time and learned how to do those flexible sigmoidoscopies and colonoscopies pretty well. And I literally have done the test, saw the blood on the test, and then went in there with a camera and actually saw the cancer cut out. Person does well if you find it early enough in time. Okay. So again, that's why we're doing the screenings. We're trying to find things early. We're trying to give you the type of information that hopefully you can solve even having the problem coming. Okay. And so that is today's program. All right. Leroy said, I wish you practice here or near New Jersey. Hey, just bring me on up there. We can talk about it. Anne Marie Muhammad says, Dr. K, I had a so-called female problem as a young adult. My change came when I came into the nation and prescribed to how to eat to live. I dumped the flesh, meat, and it brought me to another level of living. I have learned so much from the Ultimate Wellness School. Well, thank you. Thank you. Praise to the God we serve. Praise be to Allah. I don't believe I would have much to tell you all if I didn't get the blessing of being, I would say, educated about how to eat to live, because what I had before then had some value, but it wasn't the best for our people. So thank you very much for that wonderful compliment. Dante Latoya X Roddy says, Assalamu alaikum, is there a such thing as going into menopause too early, and can this cause problems if you are in early 40s? Yes, I have seen a lot of different things. Just a few minutes ago when I talked about the thyroid and the ovaries and the adrenal glands, all these different hormonal systems in our body, they all work together. I have seen, things that I would consider strange. I've seen people in 30s go through menopause. I've seen women in their 60s and 70s still having cycles every month. So, yeah, I mean, there's so many different possibilities of things that can go wrong, not only because sometimes our activities, but sometimes because of like all the things we're talking about, the chemicals, the things that we've been exposed to, the things that we're doing wrong, injuries. There are so many different possible things that can cause things to go wrong in the body. But again, we're going to talk about what you can do to try to thwart all of that. Okay. Maxine Bland says, can we talk outside of here? I would appreciate another understanding on this level. If you're talking to me, absolutely. Latanya, can you get rid of it? Tell me what you're talking about when you say get rid of it, because I believe we can get rid of just about everything. Elite Champagne, at what age should we have a colonoscopy? They typically say at 50 years old. And if the test is normal, you usually don't have to do it, but every 10 years. So that's the typical explanation. Of course, if there's something that we find that is a little strange, or you had, somebody in your family that had it at an earlier age, or a lot of people in your family had it, we may suggest you do it at a little earlier age, but typically 50 for women. Okay, let's get to this kidney. So I just wanted to show the kidney, not to go in depth, but just to show you see that blood vessel right there, and you see all of this in here. Some of us may have had a kidney before when we eat the gizzards and the chicken. But the point that I wanted to show this is that when we screen for the kidney, this kidney is a very soft organ. It's not tough like some of the organs, like a muscle can be tough. Kidney is very pliable, very soft. It can bleed real easy. Barely touch it, it bleeds. And so the urinalysis that you get when you usually go for your screening exams is for us to look and see whether there's protein, whether there's blood in your urine. And then the other thing that we're going to talk about also in the blood work is your BUN and your creatinine, which I'm going to get to in a minute. Okay. So that's what, just quickly about the kidney. That's definitely part of our screening. And then let's talk about this skin briefly. Skin is going to be a screening that's going to be most, of course, necessary in a lighter skin person, right? Because the lighter your skin, the greater your chance of skin cancer. The darker your skin, the less chance of skin cancer. And that is because if you look at this skin layer here, you see this fatty portion down there. That's why a lot of times toxins are released out of our bodies and pimples and other things like that. And then you see all the interworkings of the skin. There are a lot of different small organs in the skin, the blood flow. But really the point that I wanted to get here is that when a person is doing a skin evaluation for you as a screening, we're really evaluating dead tissue, but it's dead information, right? Because the hair is dead once it gets to the skin, and these layers up here on the top of the skin are dead. But they tell us a lot about what's going on in the body. When you see a person who has eczema or a person who has psoriasis, all that is this top layer just getting very thick. And when the top layer is very thick, it won't moisturize correctly. And so that's why the skin looks so bad, right? You look at people that have eczema or other problems, and you look at their skin, you're like, ooh, wow, that looks really bad. And it's because these, I want the other one. Let me get rid of this one. Give me just a second, y'all. Let me pull up this layer of skin. So, all those little organs I just showed you are taking care of the moisture. They moisturize the skin. You sweat, you get rid of toxins. You sweat, you cool yourself off. The hair is for protection in some areas. It's also to cool things. But in eczema and psoriasis and things like that, these top layers of the skin, all this keratin, which is just dead material, all of this is thicker and thicker and thicker. Why? Trying to protect you. It's either trying to protect something from getting to the irritated part of the skin, or it's something that's coming out and irritating the skin and making it grow in extra layers as a result of that inflammation or that inflammatory process. Okay. So this is what's happening in those type of problems. And when we do a skin evaluation on you, there are a lot of things that your skin can tell us. And it's very important, again, for lighter skinned people to make sure you get your skin evaluated, because sometimes it can start with real small, look like little blisters or little pimples. And sometimes it can be just little dark marks. Sometimes when we test and look at the back of a person's skin, darker people, when they have those dark marks, some of you have family members like, you've seen people like that where their skin is a certain color all over their body, but then you see dark marks here, or you'll see dark marks on their elbows. Those are things that tell us sometimes. Those dark marks on the back of people's neck sometimes can be a sign that diabetes is on the way, or, other type of problems. But it's important when you aren't doing the right things to get screened, because you want to try to keep things from occurring bad, or you want to stop them and don't allow them to get any worse, right? So let me see what we got here. What does it mean if you have protein in your urine? It means you have some damage, because we should not be releasing a lot of protein out of the kidneys. The kidneys keep most of the protein, and we release very little out. But as we damage the kidneys, more stuff comes out. It's like, any type of filtering system, right? If this is the way it's made normally, as damage happens, those areas continue to open up and get bigger and bigger, like just a screen on your window, right? That screen's been there for a long time. Children playing, messing with it, things hitting it, open and close. It gets hit by the sun, starts to tear apart, and you start getting holes in your screen. And now bugs can get in. Same thing with the kidney. As it gets old, damaged, those things start to open up, and now protein can get through there. And it's a sign that your kidneys are not doing as well as they should be able to do. Latanya says the pollock. I hope I'm spelling it right. I'm not sure what you're talking about, sister. Remind me, please. What age should women stop having children? That's a good question. I'm not laughing at you, sister. That's a good question, because from a medical perspective, I would have to say that I don't know. And I wouldn't try to act like I do know the answer to that question. What it is that I believe in scriptures. And I know when I read scriptures, women were having babies at 4, 5, 6, 700 years old based on the scriptures that we read. So based on what I've seen in my life and based on what I see in scriptures, there's no way I could answer that question with honest information. It would just be a guess. And somebody might give me credit for knowing something, but it would be a guess. What is the best way to get rid of eczema? Get rid of the source that's causing it. Eczema is most of the time on something that we're putting on our skin or that we're eating. And so I work with people to try to figure out what we can potentially figure out what are the possible causes, and then we do our experiment to figure out exactly what it is. What does it mean if, okay, I answered that. Where did that go? If I would have known then what I know now, I would have never had a hysterectomy. I have harmed my reproductive endocrine system, and it's very depressing. Weight gain, hair loss, focus on memory not good, achy joints. Exactly. Yes, ma'am. But stay tuned, because we're going to talk about how you can take that and do some things to help a whole lot of other people that have done it as well, right? And that's what we have to start doing as a community. And that's what I want to represent as the Ultimate Wellness Group Transformation Tuesday. And the Ultimate Wellness Group in general is going to be a group of healthcare people that treat you the best in wherever you are. And so, yes, sister, I know it's difficult for you to deal with that, but you have to be the type of person that looks at it and says, Allah would never put something on me that I'm not able to handle. And then let's work on improving you and getting you to a place where the rest of your body is starting to build itself to a place to support the things that are missing, to give you everything that you need to have a good life, a great life, and everything that you're expecting out of it, so that we can go and tell all the millions of other women that are suffering like you how to help themselves. Does that make sense? If we look at it like that, then our life becomes a mission instead of having all that weight. And I know the weight will never go away all the way, but we can definitely do something about that energy. Okay. That's what I would suggest. What causes damage to the kidneys? Plenty of things. Dehydration, bad foods, chemicals, drugs, all kind of things. Oh, polyps. She is talking about having the colon polyps removed. Oh, okay. Polyps. Yeah, we when we go up in there with those cameras and we can see them, there also is a little thing that we can introduce in there that can actually grab them and cut them and pull them out. So that's what I mean by take the polyps out. If a person has a polyp, we will take those out. But that person wouldn't be able to stay as long as a person who doesn't have polyps until their next colonoscopy. If you have polyps, we usually will have you come back within 5 years. A person who has nothing will wait for 10 years. But again, we're going to get to those solutions in a little bit. Okay.
Amina Muhammad, thank you. Alaikum salam. Are you general practitioner or specialist? What city, state do you have a website? Yes, everything is rotating down there at the bottom. My website is theultimatewellnessgroup.com. It's in construction right now. I'm renewing everything. So be patient with me on that. But I am family medicine and I'm in Houston, but I can travel. So let's not worry about that. Of course, there are some limitations of what I can do when I go to other states. But in order for us to share this type of information, we are not going to let anybody restrict us. Tanya says, can you get rid of the polyps in the colon without surgery? I apologize for not being clear. No problem, my sister. Excellent question. Yes. So the polyp that I just described to you that happens in the colon, I have also seen people have those in their nose. When people have years after year of so-called allergy problems and sinus problems, all these kind of stuff, I've seen people with polyps in their noses, like the one that I showed in the colon. And I have seen people reduce those, greatly shrink them by doing the type of things that help improve you. So yes, I do believe that a person could decrease that. Now, the problem is whether I would trust that a person who has been doing wrong for so long to develop it in the first place would do the right things and do them for long enough in order to solve that problem. That would be based on the relationship that I have and based on what I think as I'm getting the information and getting to know this person. But absolutely, yes, I do think everything in the human body that goes in the wrong direction, including cancer, can be reversed. I am from a family of 11. Anne Marie Muhammad. I am from a family of 11. My mother had her last child at 48. My dad loved us all and helped them to care for us. Praise God, we serve. Yeah, there was a lot of men with a whole lot of families back in the day. But that's another subject for another time. What causes white spots on the body when you get older? Inflammation and things depositing in the skin and the body is trying to attack it. And usually a light color is indicative of some inflammatory issues. Khalif Muhammad, how does following How to Eat to Live reverse the damage, the aging process done to your organs, body parts from a medical standpoint? About to get to that in just a minute. Great question. Thank you. It's polyps, which are abnormal tissue growth. Yeah, all my friends are having babies over 45, and they're telling me they don't care nothing about what doctors say because Sarah in the Bible is having babies over 90. Come on now, Tina Crawley. I appreciate that. Yes, ma'am. Tyrone Muhammad, Walaikum salam. Where can a person get a skin test? My family and I are in Atlanta. My daughter has eczema. Is the skin test the first test? Yes. So I think you're talking about when I was talking about the skin test is for me to look at the skin, feel the skin, test how thick the skin is, look at what the skin color is in comparison to the other skin around it. So anytime I sit down and do a screening test for anybody when I'm dealing with your skin, the first thing that I'm going to do is not look at the problem areas. The first thing I'm going to do is look at the areas that you think your skin is the best. Now I have a viewpoint of what is normal. And then I start looking at your body or what areas have problems. And then we start talking about what we're going to do from there. So I pray that I answered your question. All right, let me get back to a couple of these screening tests so we can close out, y'all. Excellent questions, though. So these last few are going to be just real quick, okay? Here's the eye. Of course, we all need to have the eye exam. The eye can change over time because it's a muscle. It can, your vision can get worse. Your vision can get better depending on the things that you're doing. And so we definitely need to get our eye examined. Just want to say this real quickly. That's the pupil. That's the black part. This is the colored part, the iris. The cornea is the white part that we see. And then the internal, this will be the lens. People say you have a detached retina. That's back here. This is the area where you're really focusing your vision on. So, like sometimes when you see something, you say, I can't really see that too well. And you kind of squint down so that you can see a little better. What you are really doing is focusing your attention of whatever you're looking at on your fovea, that little area back there that is part of the retina, but it's a very fine-tuned part of the retina. Very, very high amounts of nerves that are right there trying to get a very, very clear picture for you. And so that's kind of just what it looks like. Whatever we see, it goes inside the brain and goes upside down. In the eye and goes upside down. And then it turns back upside right in our brain. And that's how we, process vision. Okay. definitely get your eyes examined. Quickly about the teeth. Just wanted to show a picture of the tooth, just in case anybody hasn't seen one. But the tooth is a live thing. A lot of people think that the tooth is dead. It's not. You have a blood flow down here at the bottom, and you see those blood vessels going up into the tooth. I think I've mentioned on here before, I've seen people in fights and accidents and other things, get their teeth knocked, and you can see them turn gray, but the tooth didn't come all the way out, meaning that it's still stuck down in these bones, and that tissue is still keeping it down in there. And so if it's a broken blood vessel, most of the time, you can repair those blood vessels and the tooth color will come back. A lot of times it's damage to the nerve that really causes a bad tooth and causes you to need to get that tooth removed. But teeth are very important. And as I said before, the teeth and the eye are places that we can see a lot of information about what's going on in the body. Okay. And so it's very important to get your teeth checked, because a lot of times it can give us indicators that there's some other things going on that you may need to address. Okay. All right, last two sections, and I'm going to answer Brother Danny's question about women and girls. And we're going to answer the last few questions and let you all get up out of here, okay? That's what I want to show. I'm going to go through this really quickly because I don't want to spend a lot of time. But just an overview of the blood tests that you can get, all right? So you all see right there, cholesterol tests. Of course, we're testing for what clogs up arteries if you're taking in the wrong kind. Blood sugar test, of course, for diabetes. Liver function test, that's something you should get in your CMP, or a complete metabolic panel, which tells us kind of just some general things about your liver. Most of the time people don't have liver problems unless they do a lot of drinking or they're being exposed to certain chemicals. Liver can be tested by that, and we can see some basic things with that test. Kidney function test, I talked about that. That's the BUN and the creatinine. BUN is blood urea nitrogen. That's the waste that we're releasing out the body. And the creatinine is a substance that comes from our muscles that we release. It's smaller than protein, and we should be able to release that from the kidney very easily. So as creatinine builds up and the urea nitrogen, which is waste products, build up, that's how we know that your kidney's not working well, right? So either the test, and we look at your urine, and we can see the protein from the little stick that we stick in it, or the little thing that has the colors on it that we stick in there, or by doing your blood work and we see that your kidneys are going in the wrong direction, and then we'll have to do more tests. And so you see basic metabolic panel right there. That would give you just a few things, but if you do a complete metabolic panel, it'll give you all of these tests here. Cholesterol test is a different test. You should get that. And I even suggest cholesterol test for children these days, because most parents are allowing their children to do what they want to do, and they're eating horrible foods. Complete blood count, of course, that's checking all your blood cells, your red blood cells, your white blood cells, your platelets, the things that are running around our blood all the time. I just talked about basic metabolic panel and the lipid panel. So these are things that we should have done. So I went through all those. Lipid panel, thyroid panel, we talked about that earlier, right? So that's definitely something you should get checked. Enzyme markers, I don't believe that this is necessary as screening. These are things that are necessary if on the screening of the basic test, we see something that concerns us. Now, the issue is these days, y'all, that there are so many tests that these companies are making so much money on, that some of these doctors are just going to do whatever your insurance will allow. But a lot of these tests is like going fishing in the ocean at night and your eyes are closed. It's just, a lot of blood work to find stuff, but it's not really necessary. If you go looking hard enough, you're going to find something. And so here's the little section on sexually transmitted diseases. And I want to talk about this quickly, again, in relation to what I talked about earlier, as far as testing your child for sexually transmitted diseases and or yourself. So thinking from things from a perspective of being righteous and right. If a man and a woman are about to get married and you're going to go get your test done to make sure that there's nothing that you will be bringing into this marriage that doesn't belong in a marriage, of course, that is a screening that we all should do.
right? Especially if you've had partners in your past. But when we're talking about a person, a young person who has not had any sexual activity or is saying they don't have sexual activity, that can be a very strained reality, right? Because the reality of the laws in this country are that a minor can't make medical decisions for themselves unless they're an emancipated minor. Now, what is an emancipated minor from a medical perspective? That's a person who has run away and is not any longer connected with their parents or their legal guardians, or they can prove that they are sexually active. If they are sexually active, as a physician, I have to, if that person comes to me and asks for a certain test, I have to oblige. And so there are a lot of gray areas, and that's why I'm having this conversation, because Brother Danny's question was very important. I think as very responsible mothers and fathers, parents to our young girls, we have to be very careful. You know, mistakes I made of being, I would say, maybe not caring enough to listen to my daughter, and maybe not communicative enough with my daughter to really have good trust and good communication and really good trust as far as anything was concerned. But that's what it's going to take with our daughters. So if our daughters are interested in doing some things that we don't want them to do, at least they'll come tell us the truth. Because getting in the system of these companies and these people that take these medical records, you're forever in somebody's database these days, because it's all computerized, right? And these things will follow you forever. Now, why am I saying that? Because chlamydia and gonorrhea are typically things that we can treat, and there will be no long-term sequelae if you get treated in time. Herpes, something that people typically live with forever, right? Not necessarily got to be reported, but HIV and syphilis, if you come to the office and your child is tested and that test comes back positive, that has to be reported to the to the health department. Doesn't make a difference what state you're in. There's certain diseases that we have to report to the health department. And so now your children are in a database that, we may not necessarily want them to be. But all that to say, I think the relationship with a young girl, the relationship with our children is most important when we're going to these screenings, because we have to know what they're doing that could potentially put them at risk. Because the other one is HPV, the human papillomavirus, which, they're trying to use a vaccine to treat. But the reality of treating that is abstinence of sex until that woman and that man are married, and it's the right opportunity for that to happen. So I think it's a big conversation, but I just wanted to mention that because we are moving more and more and more into a medical apartheid and a medical martial law in this country, where it's going to be medicine that's going to be taking people's family members, children away because of whatever the medical community has decided. And it's going to be a very difficult battle to fight if we don't take some of these things in consideration, right? They come take your child from you because they want to make sure that your child has been treated for such. And when your child comes back to you, they're never the same. These are the type of things that are happening. So we got to be careful. Okay. I'm not going to go through the rest of these tests because these other tests are things that sometimes doctors do. But as I said, I think that many of these tests are unnecessary because a lot of times these doctors are trying to do whatever they can to make more money. And then a lot of times these doctors are being promoted by these insurance companies to do these type of tests, because the more tests you do, the more money you make, the more these companies make. But then also the more you can continue having people come back into your office and you say, I did this specialized test, and put these people in these mental states of confusion and not knowing how to stay in control. Okay. Last slide. We're going to get to the questions and we're going to end today. We're 29 minutes late. I apologize, y'all, but I really wanted to cover this today, especially after last week's debacle. I know some of you gave me some compliments and I appreciate them, but got to always stay at the highest ability and do the best we can, right? So here's just something real quick on vital signs. What is the purpose of you getting your vital signs when you go into the office? Because that is a screening. Of course, most of us know why temperature, right? If you have some type of infection, heart rate, Your heart rate is supposed to beat a certain number of times. If your heart is low or high, it could mean some things, and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes I've had professional athletes come in my office and their heart rate was 40. And my nurses are running to me like, oh my God, this person's heart rate is 46 or 40. Okay, well, are they okay? They're sitting there and they're doing everything okay, then it's not a problem. Heart rate going up is usually where most of the problems are, and it can mean certain problems going on with your heart, like abnormal beats or abnormal rhythms, whatever the case may be. Okay, blood pressure. Blood pressure is the combination of the heartbeat and the heart relaxing. So the heartbeat is the top number of systolic, the pressure that the heart has to push out, and the diastolic is when the heart is opening back up and bringing blood flow back into it. All right, very important. The higher the pressure, the more difficult and the more potential there is for damage, right? And so our blood pressure has to maintain in a normal range. There's a very big misconception about low blood pressure. You cannot have low blood pressure if you're existing everyday normal. If your blood pressure is 90/50 and somebody has told you have low blood pressure, if you don't have any problems, like when you stand up, you don't get dizzy, you don't have any problems with, losing your balance and things like that, your blood pressure is not low. Your blood pressure is at a very good level, and it just happens to be lower than what we typically think that a blood pressure should be, right? Blood pressures that go high can damage your kidneys, cause you strokes, and that's why we're checking that, okay? Respiratory rate, I think that makes sense. Got to get that good oxygen in. And so a lot of times if your breathing rate is real fast, it's because there's something wrong going on. Either that you're not getting enough oxygen or your body is trying to get rid of carbon dioxide. But either way, the respiratory rate should be in a normal range. And you see there the oxygen saturation should be 95 to 100%. Most of the time, I expect 98, 99, or 100. I don't expect anything lower. When it starts to go 97 or below, I'm trying to figure out why. Okay, and then pH at the end. pH typically is in that range, usually 7 more to 7.4 to 7.5 is where most people live. But the pH, I've discussed that before in my alkalinity show. So please check that out if you want some in-depth information about that. Okay, so that is the end of my slides. I appreciate you all having the patience and the dedication to stay. So let me know if you all thought today was a good show and whether or not you have learned something. Oh, my man, Douglas Hargrave, man, I sure appreciate you being on the show, my brother, my friend from way back when we started medical school together, Douglas Hargrave. Thank you for coming in, my brother. One of my best friends on the planet. He says, great topic, very informative. Yeah, I'm hoping everybody thinks that way. I recently read sunscreen is bad for you. What can you use to prevent sunburn? Yes, most sunscreens are bad for you because they have toxic chemicals in it, and some of the stuff in there can actually cause you to have cancer. And so what I would say for a person to prevent sunburn is to, number one, if you have lighter skin, you have to monitor how much time you're out in the sun. Understand that most of the American ideology of what to do in sunshine is all backwards. If you go to the hottest places in the world, like Saudi Arabia, sometimes it's 130 degrees. You don't see people butt naked over there, right? They don't have tank tops and shorts. They're wearing stuff that's covering their body. So we have to consider, I know when I go to the beach, most of the time I'm taking stuff off, but we have to consider that if you have light skin and it's a potential that you could have a problem in the future, such as skin cancer, you have to consider covering your skin. It doesn't have to be heavy material, but something, cover it light so that you can reflect some of the sun heat and the sun rays, right? Because that is radiation. The other thing that you can do, I would suggest, is either shea butter and or aloe vera before you go in the sun. And then periodically while you're in the sun, aloe vera would be the best, but shea butter can also keep the skin moisturized because the skin really starts to burn when it starts to dry out, when the heat starts to dry out all the water. And so when you use things, natural things, to moisturize, it will decrease how much you will get burned and it will take longer to burn. But number one, I would say use a lot of aloe vera before, during, and after your sunshine. So let me know if I answered your question. My sister Perez, what can you do about varicose veins? A whole lot of eating right, a whole lot of exercise.
Yes. Thank you, Brother Tyrone. Etta Purcell, great info. Thank you, ma'am. Does wearing the pinhole glasses strengthen the eyes? Absolutely. Absolutely. And like I said before, I am planning on getting rid of my glasses and seeing, right? I wear glasses. But my plan is to get rid of these things and be able to see very well without them. And so, yes, there's what she means by pinhole is they have a very dark lens. So it would be like somebody's real dark sunshades and there are pinholes in them. And so as you're looking out of that dark glass where you can't see, your eyes is kind of like doing this, right? If any of us wear glasses, sometimes you do like this and you can see a little better. Why? You're changing the focus of that eye, right? So it's a muscle and it moves. And so when you do like this, you're changing and you can see a little better. Why? Because that focus of that vision is setting on the back of that retina just a little bit better when you either have glasses or you squint. And so, yes, I have seen people improve, and most eye doctors don't believe that it's serious, but it's like any other muscle. You work it enough and it will give you what you deserve. Thank you for that great question. Can the color part of the eye tell you about the person's health? Absolutely. The color of the person's eye, not per se the natural color, but the type of little lines and colors that are in the color of the eye tell us a lot. That's called iridology. And I am in the process right now of learning much, much more about iridology, but there already are some things right now that I can do by looking at people's eyes and tell a lot of things about them. Michael Hamid, should one rush out to get eyeglasses when having trouble seeing? I would suggest that if you notice that your vision is getting worse, I would try to get it checked as soon as possible. Why? Because there's some things that you can stop. There's some things that you can prevent from getting worse. Like I said, the eye is a muscle and it can move. And a lot of times if you get certain type of exercises or even the right pair of glasses, when you have a thing that is reversible, you catch it in time and it doesn't get worse. Okay. Kimberly Harris, what would be the cause of low salt? There's so many, sister. I mean, it would take a long time to answer that question, but there are many, many different reasons why a person can have low salt in their body. And it doesn't always have to do with how you eat. There are hormonal issues, kidney problems. There are a lot of different reasons that can cause those type of issues. Chantel Muhammad, thank you for coming in. How reliable are home tests for protein in the urine, colon tests? The ones I've seen in the store, they're pretty good. I would say that they're pretty good. For those of you who have a physician, I would suggest, try to get one from them instead of going and getting your own because, typically the ones that we have are usually the highest quality. But the answer to your question, sister, is that I have seen people use those and they've been pretty consistent with my tests as well. So I wouldn't say that those are a bad choice. Is your cholesterol affected by the thyroid function? Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. We literally can sometimes have a person with a thyroid abnormality that causes high cholesterol and increases the chance for heart attack. So yes, ma'am. Alita Champagne, I have a 20/20 vision for many years, but now that I am 50 years old, my vision has changed. Is there any way to change my vision naturally? Yes, get the book called Take Off Your Glasses and See. And I don't remember the author, but I'll try to find my book and I'll let you know, or I'll look it up and let you know. But that's the book that I'm going to read. And if I find any other information, I'll make sure you have it, okay? Leroya. Wait a minute. All right, y'all, we're going to wrap up. So I'm going to get these last few questions and we got to go, okay? Thank you, Dr. Keely. You've covered a whole lot of Transformation Tuesday. I think you've covered every part of the body. Praise be to Allah. Well, that's exactly what I was trying to do. So thank you for giving me that confirmation. Praise be to Allah. Sharon Thomas, I'm not sure what you're saying. You said, oh my, I'm not sure what that meant. In California, young teens don't have to parents' consent. Right, yeah, California got some pretty different laws sometimes. Is oxygen therapy recommended? I would say I would consider oxygen therapy just like I talked about in previous programs about medication, right? If you are a person who is struggling with this problem or that problem or pain or whatever the case may be, if a medication is going to take care of the problem as you work on the solutions, take it. If oxygen is going to give you some relief, it's going to keep you from having shortness of breath, it's going to give you a little better ability to be comfortable, use it. But just don't stay there, okay? Do the type of things. Don't listen to these doctors that want you to get a medical problem and sit for the rest of your life and don't do anything. Just watch the TV all day. And you start getting rounder and rounder and rounder.
No, we should all be getting up and trying to challenge ourselves every day to get better. And exercise will do that for your lungs. Exercise and breathing exercises can help your lungs improve, again, with the correct eating. Okay. Thank you, Sharon Thomas. What is the most effective way to shrink and get rid of fibroids? I would say go back and listen to my show on estrogen assault and what to do. That would be the best advice. I did 2 shows. So anybody that's dealing with fibroids, I would suggest watch those shows and get busy. Excellent show. Thank you, Brother Tyrone. Sharon Crockett, don't forget to tell us about how to move forward. Great show. Praise be to Allah. Yes, I'm about to get to that right now as we close out. Thank you so much. Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Michelle X. Die Young. April Muhammad, wonderful show. Praise be to Allah. Akita Goma X, good information. I appreciate all that you do for our nation. Praise be to Allah. Thank you, ma'am. I'm sorry, Akita Goma. I'm not sure if that's male or female, but please correct me and thank you. Good show. Don't forget about the house. Yes. I've been in a class and listening. I'm a huge fan. I'm listening to the replay ASAP. Thank you, Dr. Key, for all that you give us. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Maxine Bland, a regular soldier. Take off your glasses and see. Yes, that's the name of the book. I can't remember the author, but like I said, if you can't find it, I'll try to get that author for you. It's an old book. It's been around for a while. Amina Muhammad, are chiropractic adjustments benefit for overall health and physical body? Absolutely. I think chiropractic adjustments are excellent for the body because a lot of times the body, the spine, the bones can get a little disjointed or out of balance. And that's a great way to put it in. I do chiropractic adjustments. I try to do them on a regular basis. It doesn't happen, but I get them probably a few times a year. So I think it is very good. Thanks for asking me both my questions. Absolutely, ma'am. Thank you for the good questions. Okay, so Alita Champagne says the author is Jacob Lieberman. So there it is, all of you. Male, Akita Goma, Goma X. I apologize, my brother. Thank you for coming on the show, and please accept my sorrow for not knowing. Bree Muhammad, thank you. Okay, now, solution, and we close it out, okay? The solution to the problem is easy. Get that book, read it, and apply it. Brothers and sisters, I honestly believe that my shows are giving you the solutions. When I talk about optimal vegetarianism, when I talk about the science of eating, I don't believe that I posed one screening today that you are not able to go into your repertoire of what you do in your daily life and not improve your chance of living a very, very long time. Some of you have heard me say that I expect to live beyond 200. I do, because I had a grandmother that lived to 110. And she doesn't know what I know. She didn't live by this book. This man said that we could eat 1 meal a week or 2 meals a week and live to 1,000. My desire is to prove that that is true, because he's proven everything else that I've ever read that he says, or everything else that I've read of his words, I have seen come to a reality, like everything that's going on in America right now. But eating bean soup is so paramountly important to your health. Having good milk is so paramountly important to your health. Eating fruit on a regular basis because of how good it is at decreasing aging and solving problems, how good the right vegetables are to completely solve any type of colon problem. If somebody would have asked me, Akili, are you ever going to get a colonoscopy? No. Because the majority of my diet is fiber every time that I eat. And, I wish if my wife is listening, she could either bear witness to that or not. But I would probably say that between fruit, vegetables, and navy beans, my diet is probably 70 to 80% fibrous foods. So I believe in this man. I believe in this book. I believe it changed everything for me. So I could have said what I said at the beginning and just left it there, because I believe that any of you, with your common sense and with your wisdom and in your intellectual capabilities, you could go in this book and just try to do the best that you could at applying this book, and you will have everything that he gave us as a guarantee. Eat 1 meal a day of the best of foods and fast 2 or 3 days every month. And you will not have enough germ in your body at the end of the year to make you sick 1 hour. That's what the man says. If you eat 1 meal every 2 days, you will not get sick, but maybe every 3 to 4 years. Being sick every 3 to 4 years can't be a chronic medical problem. So everything that I went over today are chronic medical problems. What else did he say? If you eat one meal every 3 days. Now, granted, he's in all of these, he's talking about the best of foods. If you eat one meal every 3 days, you will never be sick. So there's the answer. Yes, if you're on menopause. Yes, if you have had surgery and you had something removed out of your body. There's no reason for you to stay in that reality of the past. You have to come to present time and deal with today. What is today reality? What is today's reality? What can I do today? Eat right. Give my body the best nutrition. Give my body the best exercise. Give my body the best source of oxygen. Give my body the best thoughts. And watch your body respond. You can go to places on this planet Earth right now and women don't know anything about menopause. There are places on this planet Earth, the children know nothing about acne. These are American problems, heart attacks, mostly a European ideology because they are the ones that went to eating big old meals and multiple times a day. That's not indigenous societies. So the honest answer to every question that has posed today about a problem can be solved in How to Eat to Live. It is a science. It's scientific fact. And just about everything in this book, I'm watching scientists around the world experiment on it. It cannot be happenstance. It cannot be circumstantial that people all over the world are doing things and studying things and experimenting on things that this man started saying in the 30s. It can't be circumstantial. It can't be by chance. They know this man is telling the truth. They know that man told the truth, and they know that this is the best health book that you could ever purchase. So purchase it and get busy and do the best you can at applying this book. And I have plenty videos. If you all go to my YouTube channel, if you go to my Facebook channel, there are plenty videos that you can study. And a lot of the questions that are being asked to me at every program have been answered in some of my past videos. Study, you're going to have to put in some work. I can't give you all the answers. A lot of times I have a lot of things on my mind to share with you all, but in the midst of reality, I go with what God puts on my heart. What Allah guides me to do, I believe that's what's happening. I'm thankful for the compliments. I'm thankful for the people that are having changes in their lives. But every single one of you that have a problem, you took chemotherapy for cancer 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Don't ever believe that being in remission is something good. I had a conversation with somebody earlier last week, about being in remission for multiple sclerosis. That's not a good thing. The word remission, please look it up. I'd be horrified if I was in cancer remission. I'd be horrified if I was any medical problem in remission. No, I want it gone. I want it better. I want to be heading towards a solution. And I'm here to tell you that I know nothing better to tell you all than to get this book. And I pray, sincerely pray every time before I do this show. And I pray every day that God is guiding me and that I'm doing a service that is worthy and that my representation of How to Eat to Live is something that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Minister Farrakhan would be proud of. I can't say that I'm sure of that. I'm confident, but I can't say that I'm sure of that. But I pray that when you all come here and you listen to my videos and you go back and you study my videos and you look at my videos on certain subjects, because that's what you're dealing with, study it. Try to get as much information as you can, because I do try to pour myself out for your benefit. And if there's something that the video doesn't do, if there's some information that you can't find in my information, then that's when you need to reach out to me and let's do a consultation and see what it is that I can do to help you personally. Okay? So I thank you all for coming in. I pray that you got some news that you can use. I thank you again for all that are reaching out to me with your compliments and saying what my shows are doing for your health. Again, the only thing that I can tell you is praise be to Allah for that man, that book, that 2-part series. And I pray that you keep coming back. Understand that in this world that we live in, having good health is very difficult. You got to work hard at it. And so I pray again that the Ultimate Wellness Group is a place that you will come, that you will send your friends, that you, every time I have a show, please request and ask other people to come and learn. so that we can improve our health as a community and get through these times that we're living in. So again, thank you all. And I pray that your week and the rest of your week is wonderful, and that we are able to stay in a good mental place with all the evil and demonic things that are going on around us. All right. So y'all have a wonderful rest of your week. Peace.